What if I told you that one of World War II's most successful American generals was constantly criticized by his superiors for being too aggressive, too hands-on, and too willing to disobey conventional wisdom? What if that same general commanded the largest field army in American history, liberated Paris, was first to cross into Germany, and never lost a single major battle throughout the entire European campaign? Today, we're diving into the extraordinary story of General Courtney Hicks Hodges, a man whose unorthodox leadership methods drove his superiors to distraction, but earned him the unwavering loyalty of his soldiers, and some of the most decisive victories in military history. This is the story of a leader who rose from private to four-star general, who commanded over 250,000 men, and whose brilliance was often overshadowed by the very unconventional methods that made him so effective. While names like Patton, Bradley, and Eisenhower dominated the headlines, Hodges quietly revolutionized American leadership on the front lines of World War II. His story reveals a truth about leadership. Sometimes the most effective methods are the ones that make your superiors most uncomfortable. Courtney Hicks Hodges was born on the 5th of January, year 1887, in Perry, Georgia. He wasn't destined for greatness, at least not at first. The son of a small-town newspaper owner, he seemed an ordinary boy with ordinary ambitions. Like so many dreamers of his time, he set his sights on West Point, the gateway to becoming an officer in the U.S. Army. But just 1 year into his studies, disaster struck. He failed mathematics badly and was forced to leave the academy. For most men, this failure would have been the end. The gates of command were closed. But Hodges was different. Instead of giving up, he enlisted in the U.S. Army as a private in 1906. If he couldn't lead through privilege, he would lead by proving himself from the very bottom. That decision, choosing to start at the lowest rank, shaped his entire career. He learned what it meant to follow orders, to march under the hot sun, to take commands from officers who had never been in the mud. And he swore that if he ever became a leader, he would lead differently. By year 1916, Hodges was serving on the Mexican border during General Pershing's expedition against Pancho Villa. He quickly realized that textbooks and theory often collapsed in the face of unpredictable combat. Soldiers needed leaders who adapted, not commanders who clung to rigid plans. Then came World War I. Hodges went to France as a battalion commander. What he did there would set the tone for his life. At the Meuse-Argonne offensive, under a rain of enemy fire, he personally scouted enemy lines, organized storming parties, and fought for 20 hours straight to force a river crossing. His courage earned him the Distinguished Service Cross. But more importantly, it showed his men something rare. Their commander wasn't hiding in safety. He was standing in the mud with them. The years between wars gave Hodges time to refine his philosophy. He became an instructor at West Point, ironically, the very place that once rejected him. Later, at Fort Benning, he served as assistant commandant of the infantry school. Here, Hodges began to put into words the principles that would define him. Presence leadership. Leaders must be physically close to their men, not sheltered miles behind the front. Ground truth. Maps and reports could never replace seeing the terrain and the soldiers with your own eyes. Adaptation. Success depended on adjusting to the battlefield in real time, not clinging to rigid doctrine. These ideas clashed with traditional military thinking. Most generals believed command required distance, detachment, and rigid hierarchy. Hodges believed the opposite. And while his methods made superiors uneasy, they made his men trust him completely. By year 1944, Hodges had achieved something almost unthinkable. From private soldier, he had risen to command the first U.S. Army, the largest American field army ever assembled, 18 divisions, over 250,000 men. But he led differently. His staff officers were called his kitchen table conferences. Instead of stiff, formal briefings, Hodges would gather his men around maps at dawn, inviting even junior officers to speak openly. His mantra was simple: let's think this out loud. He flew low over enemy lines in a Piper Cub aircraft, walked through foxholes under fire, and set up his headquarters so close to the front that he could hear the artillery thunder. His generals called this reckless. His soldiers called it leadership. In August year 1944, Hodges faced one of the war's most symbolic moments. The French resistance had risen in Paris. Higher Allied command hesitated, fearing the city would become a bloody trap. Hodges didn't wait. He ordered a corps-sized advance straight into the capital. When the First Army entered Paris, they weren't just liberating a city, they were delivering one of the greatest morale victories of the war. Crowds lined the streets, the world rejoiced, and Hodges' decisiveness changed history. But not everyone celebrated. General Omar Bradley, Hodges' superior, often complained that he was too hands-on, too willing to ignore proper chains of command. The harshest criticism came during the Battle of Herken Forest in late year 1944. Hodges' aggressive push into the thick woods caused staggering casualties. Historians would later call it one of the most costly mistakes of the European campaign. Yet Hodges' defenders argued he was fighting the war he saw in front of him, not the one drawn on maps. And when Germany launched its desperate counteroffensive, the Battle of the Bulge, it was Hodges who saw the threat first. On the morning of the 16th of December, before most Allied commanders realized what was happening, he had already ordered defenses. His readiness saved thousands of lives. By March year 1945, Hodges delivered a victory no one could deny. At Remagen, his men captured the last intact bridge across the Rhine River. Instead of waiting for higher approval, Hodges ordered his forces across immediately. Within days, he had poured thousands of men and vehicles into the heart of Germany. That bold move cracked open Hitler's final defenses. The First Army pushed east, linking with the Soviets at the Elbe River, cutting Nazi Germany in two. Through it all, Hodges' army, unlike so many others, never lost a major battle. While Patton chased headlines and Bradley polished his image as the soldier's general, Hodges quietly earned something more powerful: loyalty. His men knew he understood them. They had seen him in the mud, heard his voice in their foxholes, watched him risk his life flying overhead just to understand their struggle. One officer later said, "Other generals commanded us, Hodges led us." On the 15th of April, year 1945, Courtney Hodges was promoted to 4-star general, becoming the first man in U.S. Army history to rise from enlisted private to full general. After the war, he returned quietly to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, retiring in 1949. Unlike Patton or Eisenhower, he wrote no memoirs, gave no speeches, sought no glory. He died in 1966, remembered not by headlines, but by the men who served under him. Courtney Hodges' story isn't just about battles, it's about leadership. He showed that true command isn't about rank or prestige, but about presence, trust, and courage. He accepted criticism from above so he could deliver victory for those below. History may not shout his name as loudly as Patton or Eisenhower, but the record is clear. Under Hodges, the First Army liberated Paris, crossed the Rhine, cut Germany in half, and never lost a major battle. And that is the measure of true leadership. Not glory, not popularity, but victory.